It's my pleasure to invite an opening address by UNSW Vice-Chancellor Professor Attila Brungs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Attila Brungs.
Thank you kindly for that bit of anticipation. Well done. A very warm welcome to you all. Thank you very much for being here today. And again, Auntie Maxine, for your warm welcome as always. I think what Auntie Maxine's story also demonstrates is something that we have great strength here at UNSW and Australia more broadly, in that, as I say time and time again, knowledge is at the heart of what we are as a university. And you've heard from Auntie Maxine, knowledge has been generated on this site and by people for 60,000 years. And that's quite a heritage to draw upon as we start tackling and thinking through where the future is, and AI drives knowledge generation into the future. Thank you also, Wilson, for your wonderful introduction. A bit of interesting information on my colleague here. He, along with Alan Finkel, has bought one of the very first tickets to be a Virgin Galactic space tourist, flying out. I'm not sure to be insanely jealous or very happy that I don't have to get on that flight. Regardless, congratulations for that. But I digress. It's a very exciting day, and thank you very much for the invitation to launch it. To my academic research colleagues, to our industry friends, a very warm welcome to UNSW. The AI Institute is our new flagship. It's a university-wide institute, and I really would like to congratulate the co-founder and the interim director of the Institute, Associate Professor Aziz. Your team, for your dedication, the groundbreaking work that you've been doing, and just the perseverance. I'm sure, actually, most of you may not find this surprising, but sometimes in universities, to get such a comprehensive institute such as this, with disciplines from right across the university, isn't necessarily an easy task, even in areas such as AI, which everybody's enthusiastic about. So the tenacity in pulling that together should be applauded. We have around 300 academic staff and more than 40 groups right across UNSW who work in AI. The work they do spans multiple disciplines. Just an indication of how important the applications of AI are for almost every facet of human life. The diversity of such research is awe-inspiring. I'm relatively new to UNSW, and the opportunity just to look into all the research that we're doing right across and with our partners, a number of other universities, is quite incredible. Optimizing catalysis of hydrogen fuel, autonomous remote monitoring of Australia's vast coastlines, safe mining operations, medical-based imaging diagnostics, epidemiology, hospital safety, human performance and stress management, just to name a few. One of the ones that did strike me the other day as I wandered around your school, of course, was some of the best soccer-playing robots in the world. For the 5 times world soccer champions, in fact. Maybe I'm a little bit passionate about the soccer robots as well, because I've got one of the robots sitting at my desk. So those of you who see me on online meetings see it behind me. And the recent visit, both the Provost and I tried to out-dribble the robot, and in soccer sense, of course, and we lost. For those of you who heard me say many times, universities simply exist for public good. We are public purpose institutions. Our AI researchers embody this ideal into their careful work, aimed to benefit society at a global scale. They strive to achieve this through interdisciplinary research, connections, outcomes, and also by bringing all the threads of AI together in this institute to ensure a cohesive approach, to make sure we mitigate against unintended consequences. The institute will perform a forum for researchers and students to share ideas, maximise opportunities in this collaborative environment. But as always in a collaborative environment, have incredible discoveries that will shape people's minds and be exciting. It'll all play its part in also explaining the broader benefit to the community of how AI will benefit society, can benefit society, might benefit society. It'll also encourage debate about the use of AI and, importantly, its limitations, including thinking through appropriate regulation. This also includes the promotion and participation in activities such as law, policy, and public debate. All of these are absolutely critical at any point when new technologies are used across society. And that is why I am proud to say UNSW is recognised as a world leader in the development of AI as a safe, reliable technology that will have positive impact. This aligns with the university's commitments to ethical behaviour, to our engagement with community on important issues, and to uphold our values of contributing to an equitable and just society. But to ensure that AI can be accessed by people who need it most, we need to seek out partners, not just from academia, but right across industry, government, NGOs, non-profit organisations. And not here in Australia just, but right across the world. The AI Institute's commercial arm is already meeting this brief, providing a front door to UNSW, reaching out to people right around the world for those who want to work from us, trying to identify those whose lives will benefit most from the work that we could do. UNSW prides itself on its success in building innovative partnerships with public and private stakeholders. And while I'm biased, I'll say it's one of the most entrepreneurial universities in Australia. We actively seek those partnerships because we believe that's the most effective way that we can serve this public good that I spoke about before. The knowledge, the expertise, the networks, these are things that need to be nurtured over decades. And in Australian universities, it makes a rich asset for us all to work with industry and government, and things we could draw upon over the last 2 years as we tackled the pandemic. The market knowledge and commercial opportunities that the industry offer also is equally potent. This type of breaking down the silos is the way forward. The big takeaway, I think, from some of the recent Jobs and Skills Summit was the importance of collaboration and cooperation across all different sectors is absolutely critical if we take the next stage for Australia, particularly in driving productivity. The onus is on all of us to be innovative and creative and find new ways of working as the world transitions. Research, translation, commercialisation and industry collaboration are, in my opinion, actually about to enter a global era. I think we've talked about multidisciplinary work for a long time. I think the seeds are now set that we have a state government, a Commonwealth government, ready to capitalise on world-class research, who are focused on research translation. We have industries right across Australia that now take this seriously, and our connections globally, I do believe, will make this a global era. There's never been a time that our city, state and country has been more opening to working with universities and the things that we can do and bring benefits to society. Since the change of government, UNSW has had visitors from 5 federal ministers across education, industry, science, climate change and energy. And all of them are excited to see the contribution that UNSW can make in support of jobs growth, health outcomes, societal prosperity, climate action, and just a more creative and cohesive society. I'm sure all of you today will bring your own unique perspective to this common desire to find ways that we can work together to achieve these outcomes. As I said at the beginning, I am very delighted to be here to launch this with you, to launch the UNSW AI Institute. There's a real sense of excitement right across UNSW, I know, for the possibilities that AI will deliver. The speakers you hear from today, I think, will flam the flames of your excitement. I wish you very fruitful discussions. And once again, my congratulations to Professor Aziz and all his colleagues for this absolute milestone in the launch of the AI Institute. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Like any great Vice-Chancellor, the Professor was judiciously cautious about indicating whether or not he might like to go into space himself. Between you and I think it's pretty sure he would. The other thing he was judicious about is when he said that the possibilities of what AI may, can, and will do. And that's what this institute is about, isn't it? To try and make less of the might into the can and will do. And but before we move on, we would have heard from the New South Wales Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government, the Honourable Victor Domnello MP, but he was not able to attend today, unfortunately. However, he has sent us a video message. Tom, could you play it, please?
Hi, I'm Victor Domnello, Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government. I congratulate the great University of New South Wales for the launch of the AI Institute. In New South Wales, we have led the nation and in parts the world when it comes to digital service offerings. Just in the service app alone, you can see your driver's license, you will soon see your birth certificate. We will be launching a digital ID. You can have your education wallet put there very soon. We will be putting more and more credentials in there. The critical thing though, regardless of the product offerings that we will continue to roll out over time, is that the offerings are built on a foundation of trust. And for me, trust has 3 components: the who, the what, and the why. The who is simply, do you trust that I am who I say I am? And that goes to digital identity. The what is, do you trust that I can do what I say I can do? And that goes to digital credentials and licensing. The why is a bit more involved. Why would you trust? Or why is something trustworthy when it comes to service delivery. And this is where the AI Institute has a major role to play, because I would consider something trustworthy in terms of service delivery if they protect my privacy, if they protect my security, if they are inclusive, if they are transparent, if they are ethical when it comes to the use of data and the use of responsible AI. And that's why the work that the AI Institute at the University of New South Wales, what it will do in framing up responsible AI, as it will be increasingly used not just in government but by businesses and right across society, is absolutely foundational for a trusted society for the many, many years ahead. So congratulations again, University of New South Wales. Again, you lead the way in such a critical area for all of us.
Thank you, Minister. Clearly someone who gets it. Responsible AI and ethical AI and the whole issue of trust, incredibly important to artificial intelligence. Next, we will hear from Dr. Ian Opperman, the New South Wales Government's Chief Data Scientist, based within the Department of Customer Service and considered a thought leader on the digital economy and big data. Sir, Dr. Opperman, please welcome Dr. Opperman.
I'd like to begin by also adding my acknowledgement to country, pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and offer those respects to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander elders who are with us today. First of all, congratulations. Thank you very much for having me here, but congratulations. This is an incredible event. As Attila said, it's really no small feat to stand up an institute and to stand up an institute with such ambitious goals. And to stand up an institute which actually speaks to that heart of multidisciplinary research and looking to affect challenges that affect the real world. I believe the use of AI is inevitable. We know that we live in a world with an ageing, urbanising, growing population. We know that we live in a world with a changing climate. We know we live in a world where many things that we once took for granted are changing and are changing increasingly rapidly. We hit or will hit 8 billion people on the planet this year. First time in human history, 8 billion people. And that's a little earlier than expected, even with the impact of COVID. We anticipate that we will hit 8.5 billion people by the end of the decade. That's an extra 500 million people. No more land, no more water, no more natural resources. We have what we have. It's a closed system in many respects. And we know that each and every one of those 8.5 billion people, that extra 500 million people, need to be clothed, fed, entertained, educated. And of course, we all expect an improvement in our quality of life, or at the very, very least, maintaining the quality of life that we have today. By 2050, that's expected to be 9.6 billion people, so another billion people again. No more land, no more water, no more natural resources. And as the world around us, as the climate changes, we know that where we draw our calories from, how we feed ourselves, is going to change increasingly rapidly. The use of AI and digital technologies is inevitable to address that challenge of sustainable intensification as we add more people who expect more into this world, and those people live longer, and those people retire at approximately the same age. So the combination of sustainable intensification and the drive for productivity can really only be met by increased use of data, digital and AI. In New South Wales, we've been on our own journey with respect to the use of data and with respect to digital and with respect to AI. In 2015, New South Wales Government established the Data Analytics Centre to bring to bear data and sophisticated scientific techniques, data algorithms and AI to bear on wicked policy challenges. So problems which were complex, subtle and ultimately had people's behaviour at their heart. We also introduced in 2015 the Data Sharing Act, which required government agencies to share data with the Data Analytics Centre. And over the course of the period up until 2019, we've been exploring increasingly sophisticated uses of algorithms and AI. COVID certainly changed New South Wales Government's attitude towards data and AI. Suddenly we moved from doing interesting things to doing seriously important things delivering actionable insights to health, to transport, to treasury, to industry, to help understand the impact of COVID and also the impact of the various restrictions and also the impact of the stimulus that was going into the economy. We've learnt a great deal, and during 2020, New South Wales released its AI strategy and also some basic how-to guides. During the course of 2021, we established the AI Advisory Committee, some of whom members are in the audience today, and reviewed actual uses of AI within New South Wales Government in transport, in education, in health and in police, and ultimately delivered our AI Assurance Framework, which was our way of helping people inside government to understand whether they were appropriately, ethically, reasonably and fairly using data, digital and AI. It's our Model T Forward version of an assurance framework. We know that when we press the accelerator, it goes forward. When we turn left, mostly it turns left. But it's also something we know that we have to keep working on. And we have to work with partners. We have to work with organisations like the AI Institute. New South Wales also released its Turning Ideas into Jobs strategy in 2021. And this year released a 20-year R&D roadmap from the Office of the Chief Scientist and Engineer, Hugh Darren-White. What that called for was government, universities and industry working much more closely together on critical technologies and technologies where New South Wales has a competitive advantage and areas where we have the most possibility of turning ideas into jobs, getting research out of the labs and into the hands of people who can use it and use it at scale. I'm absolutely delighted to say that the AI Institute is exactly what was imagined as part of that turning ideas into jobs and exactly what's being anticipated, thinking through what we can do to really drive the use of AI in New South Wales and also drive much closer relationships between government, university and industry. But I'd like to leave you with one small but interesting challenge. Our need for use of data, digital and AI will only amplify, increase as that sustainable intensification challenge starts to become a sustainable intensification need. Our need to respond to the world around us, our need to respond to that ageing, urbanising, growing population in a changing world means that we must accelerate the ethical, appropriate use of AI, work through multidisciplinary approaches to those real-world challenges, and drive ever closer collaboration between industry, government and universities. The challenge I'd like to leave you with is, as that need grows, is to help make New South Wales the home for data, digital and AI. Help make New South Wales the most customer-centric government in the world and help make sure that as Australia and New South Wales faces its own sustainable intensification challenge, that you are right there at the heart of that response. Congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you kindly, Dr. Opperman. Excellent words. Haris, Toby, the gentleman, Dr. Opperman has just said, this is exactly, UNSW AI is exactly what he was hoping for. Now we get to hear from this leadership of UNSW AI, Haris Aziz and Toby Walsh. Now, Haris is Scientia Associate Professor at UNSW Sydney, Director of UNSW AI and Leader of Algorithmic Decision Theory Group at the School of Computer Science and Engineering at UNSW Sydney, which, by the way, celebrated its 30th birthday yesterday. Congratulations. Toby is a Laureate Fellow and Scientia Professor of AI at UNSW Sydney and Research Group Leader at CSIRO Data 61. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Haris and Toby.
So only a few months back that we were in this exact room, and Ian Gibson, he shared his vision for a university-wide AI Institute. A lot of work has gone behind the scenes, and in May, our institute was formally recognized as a UNSW Institute. And today it brings me great pleasure to welcome you all in this particular event. And the backdrop of this particular institute is that UNSW has traditionally had great expertise in AI, machine learning, and data sciences. We have 300 strong faculty members who are either working directly in AI fundamental research or they're applying AI techniques to various application domains. We have leadership in many research areas in AI, but what was really astounding when I started looking into our a group of members, that we have representation from all faculties. So the goal of our particular institute is that we want to promote interdisciplinary research excellence. We want to participate in public debate. Toby's bookstall will be right at the back during this break. We want to play a role in coordinating standards and activities, and most importantly, we just want to make sure that we want to maximize on our strengths. We capitalize and maximize our impact, and really make it easy for the rest of the world. We have several people from corporate sector, industry who are here. We wanted to make it easy for them to engage with us in terms of research and commercialization. So before I proceed, I'd just like to thank our core leadership. This couldn't have been done without their support. So we have several deputy directors who are already in the audience. Please feel free to meet them. I won't take all the names separately, but I really like to thank all of them. A lot of work has gone behind the scenes to get this started. And as you can see, we have representation from various faculties. And apart from that, we've also set up an external advisory committee, which will be led by Dr. John Whittle. And you'll soon hear more about the national AI scene from Stella Solar, who is the director of the National AI Center. And with this, I'll just ask Toby to make a few other remarks on our center. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Haris. I want to really offer my personal thanks to Haris for all the effort he's been putting in the last few months to setting up what I hope is going to be really exciting. It's going to be Australia's largest, newest, and I think most exciting AI research institute. I have to be honest with you, I've spent over 40 years studying artificial intelligence, and for most of those 40 years, pretty much no one really cared too much about what I did until very recently. And in the last few years, my phone started ringing, journalists would ring me up, I'd be asked to talk about the exciting and somewhat nervous possibilities that AI was starting to enter our lives. Indeed, I was actually on the radio just an hour and a half ago talking about that, answering the journalists' questions about how AI was going to perhaps take his particular job. I assured him it wasn't. But now you can't open a newspaper without reading multiple stories about how AI is doing something new, something in some cases challenging in our lives. And so when we started to look around a year or so ago, what was going on, bring together all the efforts in AI across the university, perhaps we shouldn't have been surprised, but we were surprised that there was more AI going on outside of computer science than inside computer science. It really is wonderful. It really has left the ivory tower and starting to be used. And it's not being used just by the people you would expect it to be used. Of course, it's being used by people in engineering, as we heard from the VC, to develop new materials for catalysis. It's being used in physics. It's being used in all the obvious places. But it's being used in every faculty, pretty much every school. I can see in the audience Ollie and Caroline at Arts and Design. They were the very first winners, part of the team that won the very first Eurovision AI Song Contest. We have colleagues in law worrying about the legal aspects of AI increasingly being used within law, and also about how the interesting questions that AI being used, legal questions that AI being used raise. So as it leaves the ivory tower, starts turning up in our lives, it behoves us to think about how we do that in the most responsible, most inclusive way. And my ambition for the Institute is that we contribute to that. That involves, of course, technical issues, and you'll see around the walls of this room some snapshots of some of the technical work that's being done in a wide variety of schools around the university, looking at some of those issues about how do we actually do this efficiently, effectively, and fairly. But it's a broader conversation that goes beyond just technical questions. It goes to questions of of law, and so we have a really important role to play to contribute to the debate and discussion with politicians, with legal experts about how AI gets used responsibly, and also questions of education. And so my small part of that is to contribute to the public debate, to write a sequence of books, and if in the break you want to find out more, there's a bookstore. We'll be selling copies of my latest book, Machines Behaving Badly, which is a catalogue of stories of all the ways it can possibly go wrong. So I'm really excited that we get to launch the Institute today. If you're a part of the university, I encourage you to join, if you already haven't joined the Institute, and contribute to the work that we're going to be doing. If you're one of our friends in industry or government, I hope it's going to provide a convenient front door to access the broad expertise that is available in this university, to join us on this mission of making sure that we deploy AI in a responsible and inclusive way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Toby, and thank you, Aziz. And thank you, Haris. As Toby was showing, AI is everywhere, but to quote William Gibson, it is unevenly distributed, I think is the problem. Next, we're going to sorry, I lost my train of thought. Now that you have a sense of what UNSW is about, it's time to hear from some of the brilliant researchers who are bringing that artificial intelligence and this institute to life. First, let's hear from Lina Yao, Scientific Associate Professor of UNSW Sydney and the Director and Founder of the Data Dynamics Lab. Her expertise ranges from machine learning and IoT to human-machine interactions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a deep pleasure to be here. Today, I will briefly introduce our effort on understanding AI-infused decision-making systems on the nature of limited data. Okay. So the recent technological breakthroughs in machine learning and AI have equipped with the traditional decision-making systems with higher level of intelligence to deal with more complex and diverse situations. Such AI-infused decision-making systems actually have been penetrating into our everyday lives. So as an individual, from very trivial ones, for example, find out where to eat after work on Yelp, and what to watch on Netflix and TikTok, and what to buy on Amazon, to the life-related decisions, like get the appropriate health or workout suggestions from the fitness AI, such kind of apps. And on the other hand, the national agencies and the business also rely such decision-making systems to help with the decision-making processes in their practice. For example, the banks use this system to evaluate the risk of the credit card applications or the mortgage applications, and then make a decision on approval or denial. And the cybersecurity, actually, this kind of systems have been, I think, playing more important role in helping the operators to produce the mitigation course of actions to deal with any potential cyber threat or cyber anomalies. So not to mention the wide adoption in the law enforcement and the healthcare. So the success of AI, machine learning, especially deep learning, one of the key factors is the large-scale data sets. So theoretically, we can have the large-scale data sets from every dimension of our lives, thanks to technology, right? For example, IoT, Internet of Things, social medias, the web. So the data is has quite a lot of different formats, like the numbers, facts, observations, measurements, quantity, graph, and information. But, so practically, it's actually difficult for us to collect the sufficient and high-quality training data due to the security, privacy, and safety, some other related concerns. For example, there is an increasing concern about the social media data. So such kind of data actually contain lots of clues that can be deciphered to infer the attributes of the users who produce this data. And another example about the safety, we can imagine a new drug discovery. So we need to find out the effectiveness of this new drug as well as potential side effects, right? But due to some potential toxicity or low activity or some lack the biological information on this new molecule structure, so you can imagine it's hard for us to perform the large-scale clinical trial to collect the sufficient data. So therefore, actually, the most common situation for us to deal with is we only have very few samples with supervision information in our real practice. So currently, along with this research, the current research efforts can be generally categorized into 3 directions, namely augment, constrain, and improve. So for the augment, it's very straightforward for us to think about it. So our problem is we only have very few samples. Why not we just enlarge the data set to make it bigger and larger, right? So under this research, it can be further divided into 3 different approaches. The first approach is to enrich and transform the current training data. For example, we can design some handcrafted rules or more advanced automated strategies like the generative models to generate the variants based on the current training data and merge all the generated data with our previous data together to create a hybrid larger data sets. And another way is leverage the weakly labeled or unlabeled data. So in some cases, actually, the unlabeled data is much easier and less expensive to have. Imagine an example. So for the surveillance cameras, they keep recording the massive amounts of images, right? So this image is without any annotation, but it can be leveraged to contribute to the learning tasks. The third way is transfer. So we can transfer from some other similar data sets in other domains. It's under of the umbrella of transfer learning. So the assumption here is we assume the data sets in our source domain and the data sets in our target domain, they share some common patterns. And these patterns can be leveraged to use in the learning task for the target domain. The other direction is the constraint. So rooted in the statistics and the numerical algorithms, the supervised machine learning, actually the basic, the general idea is we try to learn a function in a family that can minimize the loss between the ground truth values and the predicted values, right? So for the learning is actually, you can think about as a search process that needs to search all the possibilities in the hypothesis space and find out the best one that can map from the inputs to the outputs. So the basic idea for constraint is to try to reduce the complexity of this hypothesis space. So, and imagine if we can have the smaller hypothesis space, that means the very few samples we currently have maybe become sufficient, right, for this smaller hypothesis space. Under this research, there are lots of amazing research going on. So for my group, one of our work is related to the embedding learning. The basic idea of embedding learning is to transform the original data set to the smaller embedding space, and where the samples the similar samples will become closer, where dissimilar samples will become distinguishable. So the third direction is about improve. Yeah, so this, the basic idea for improve is we try to optimize the search strategies to find out the optimal hypothesis in the hypothesis space. So still, there's lots of different research investigations. It's very, so one of our work is related to meta-learning. So our goal is to learn the meta-global parameters, and these meta-parameters can help with learning to building up a good model initialization. And on the other hand, we also look at how to directly learn an optimizer that can guide the search steps to find the optimal hypothesis. To further improve the generalization and to speed up the optimization process, we also integrate the task-specific memory networks. And currently, we are working on an extended challenge under this category. So we already know we have the large hypothesis space, but we only have very few samples. So how can we ensure the predictions still can have the high confidence, right? So it's related to the AI uncertainty. So I think this is a very key factor that can affect the AI adoption in reality. So currently, we are investigating on the neural process model, the neural process families, to deal with this challenge. So lastly, I would like to quickly conclude my today's speech by sharing a little bit about our research roadmap and the research vision. So we strive to do the twin-win research. So on one hand, we try to develop the theoretically sound research that can be published on the top venues. And on the other hand, we are also investigating how to apply our machine learning methods to serve the real-world applications. So today's speech is related to our current progress under data efficiency and generalization. And we are also currently working on the explainability. And lastly, I just want to stress, I'm a believer, so the technology is nothing without the soft touch of the humanity. So that's why my goal is to develop the AI systems that can be seen as the partners with humans, and then we can work collaboratively together to improve the societal welfare and human well-being, and to enhance the human decision-making processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yo. Thank you, Professor Yo. I love that line, the soft touch of humanity. Very nice. Now we hear from Hussein Abbas, Professor at UNSW Canberra, Founding Editor-in-Chief of the IEEE Transactions on Artificial Intelligence, and former Executive Director of the Defence and Security Applications Research Centre. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Hussein Abbas.
Sorry, my computer decided to go to sleep just when I came here. But as a computer scientist, there's always a backup. So, good morning. In the next 10 minutes, I will be sharing with you 9 lessons that I have learned in my life. And I hope that I will manage to get through all of them quickly. 16th of May, 2006, I was fortunate to be the executive director for the Defense and Security Application Research Center. We had a meeting, a gathering like that in Canberra, and I hosted the Vice Chief of the Defense Force, General Gillespie. And one thing that we've learned from this experience is that events like the one that we're having today They just demonstrate the social commitment of the university and the academics to create impact for the society. It's an opportunity for partnership, and it's an opportunity to start new, impactful research. So let me share with you 2 of these pieces of impact that we have created. 2006, we developed a digital twin for air traffic management. This digital twin, we could evaluate any future scenario in air traffic management that you can imagine, but we could not say how today look like. We could not answer this question. So we spent 2 years just doing data entry, digitizing the aerospace. It was the most boring job technologists, computer scientists, engineers could do in their life. But it has to be done, and it has to be done to generate the impact. It taught us that 80% of impact could be boring, but look for the other 20%. That's what keeps us going, and if you can maintain it, you will get there. October 2008. October 2008, the system was up and running, monitoring and assessing every aircraft that enters the Australian airspace. You name it, pollution, 5 pollutants, safety and security, to the workload on the air traffic controller on the ground. Just to give you an idea, in 2010, 2 years after our system was working in real time, the UK NAT, which is the Civil Aviation Authority in the United Kingdom, published a study that used 12 months of data. It took them another 12 months to do the study, and it costed them 10 million British pounds when we were doing it in Australia in real time for 2 years, costing us a few dollars running our machine. Our innovation saw algorithms for real-time trajectory optimization, dynamic reconfiguration of the aerospace, predictive analytics for risk assessment, signal processing and machine learning for assessing human performance, and many more. But there was a special event in 2013. 2013, I flew with my team to France. We wanted to run the first experiment of its type. We wanted to connect the human brain to a safety-critical system, and we successfully did. We looked at how human brain signals can influence and shape automation in real-time safety-critical system. We have learned that the boring work that we spent much earlier gave our system life. It gave it meaning. Spending a sabbatical in Singapore in 2014 gave me the opportunity to write a book on one of our innovations, computational red teaming, or the use of artificial intelligence for vulnerability analysis, autonomous identification of vulnerabilities in systems using AI. The year the book was published, organizations started to pay attention to red teaming in the cyberspace. This book was the Bible, the only Bible available on computational red teaming at the time. Little did I know that what I did 10 years ago became the fashion. The experience repeated itself many times in my life, including a book on the foundation of trusted autonomy. This one was an edited book with colleagues from the Defense Science and Technology Group. Once more, this book, when it was published, I did not expect much. Within 6 months, it was one of the top 10 most downloadable books in Springer, and to date, in the last 4 years, it was downloaded 220,000 times. I have learned that it's never too late to publish. Now I will move from applied science to basic science. We've been moving from the industry-driven projects to basic science. In 2017, I had a single undergraduate student working on sheepdogs. What we wanted to understand is the concept of influence. What does it mean on a very fundamental mathematical level, and how we can model it? We've been designing algorithms, and the team grew. The team grew to 40+ scientists within UNSW and external collaboration, designing algorithms for mission planning of multi-robot systems, communication protocols, where the packets that you are transferring are neural networks that we can convert into English sentences back and forth as we please. Real-time algorithms for guidance and predictive analytic for swarm in GPS-denied environment, social influence modeling, information warfare, and trust in human AI ecosystem. In this experience, we've learned that basic science is not solutions waiting for problem. Basic science is opportunities waiting for investors who have the eye to see the markets of the future. The slide was faster than me. We've always been on the look to bring Australian culture into our technology. In 2021, we encountered a beautiful Australian Aboriginal language called Jingulu. It has a very unique syntactical structure that matched the mathematics in our guidance and control system. And that allowed us to design a fully interoperable mathematical system that is linking all layers in human AI teaming, from the human AI communication layer all the way down to the control and guidance layer. Now I will conclude, and I would like to leave you today with a single take-home message. I am nobody without the people who've been working with me. They have been extremely honorable, they have been extremely clever, they have been supportive, they have been the leaders of all the achievements that we've done. You will forget my speech. You will forget me. But there's one thing that I hope by the end of today that you will keep it in your mind. AI is nothing without people. AI is people. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. A nice finish. I have to say, you're giving hope to students everywhere in the world by telling them that no matter how boring the task, it ultimately does deliver something. So there you go. Next, we hear from Stella Solar, Director of the CSIRO National AI Centre, and until last year, Global Director of the AI Solutions Sales and Strategy at Microsoft. After her remarks, we'll take some questions, so please keep an eye out for roving mics. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stella Solar.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here, and I'm so thrilled to be part of the opening of UNSW's AI Institute. But also, I'm actually a graduate of UNSW, so it's fantastic to be back on campus. I actually studied commerce and arts here for my undergraduate, but at the same time, I did a lot of chamber music. I was a musician, and so I did a lot of chamber music in orchestras with the music faculty. I was putting on plays, theaters. It was just a fantastic playground for innovation from my perspective. I even remember crossing the mountain of UNSW multiple times per day, all the way up from Clancy, down to Anzac Parade, and back up to Clancy Auditorium. It was a thrill. It was my gym workout every single day. And also the parking fines. I don't know why that was a good idea. Every morning I would make that decision to drive to university. And even though I studied commerce and arts, you know, my majors were economic strategy, film, theater, philosophy, strategic management, international business. I did a lot of music. Even though I did all of that, I landed in tech. It was the first job that I took on. It was inside sales for a technology startup. And that's how I started my tech career. It was a happy accident. And nothing that happened before it could have predicted that landing in a tech role. And from there, it's been an adventure. In fact, a lot of people will call me an AI expert, but I feel like a technology adventurer. I always love being on that frontier, and I think the adventures of studying at UNSW actually helps to embrace that frontier of the latest technologies, the latest kind of work that you can be involved in, and pushing your own limits, publishing and performing your own plays, such as what I did. So backing yourself at those undergraduate experiences actually pays off dividends when it comes to innovation later on. And my own non-linear path is actually not an anomaly in the AI field. I've met many, many folks in AI, and they've all had this non-linear background. In fact, in my own team at the National AI Center, as we're driving that mission to help accelerate positive AI adoption, my own team is a mixture of poets turned AI neurolinguistic researchers. I can see some head nods who are relating to that. I also have an urban designer who now is an AI program manager. I also have an accountant who is now an AI business consultant. So what I'm sharing with you here is that we are all part of this AI journey, and the streams leading to AI are actually very much non-linear, and that is good. That's what's needed for us to create technology that is diverse, that is inclusive, that is tapping into all of that innovation and knowledge that we have as a community. And that's what I see here with the establishment of the UNSW AI Institute. Imagine having this central point that is able to connect so many faculties, so many disciplines. And I've already heard such great work that's happening at various faculties when it comes to AI. How do we cross-pollinate that knowledge? How do we amplify the fantastic stories of impact that are emerging? That is what UNSW Institute is aiming towards, and that's why I'm so thrilled to be part of this. There is so much change in our world, and I think Ian Opelman just earlier shared the great challenges that are ahead of us: climate change, health, aging population. Not only that, but now everything also seems to be generating data. How much more data can we get? But there's more and more data coming, right? The volumes, the velocity, the variety of data. How do we continue being our human selves in such a highly complex world? How do we continue to make sense of it, to move through it, when it's increasingly seeming like a complex jungle of data, processes, and overwhelming challenges? And these grand challenges are needing grand tools to also help us navigate and tackle them. And so I see AI as one of these grand tools that can help us navigate the jungle of data, the exponentially accelerating and densifying jungle of data, but also the grand challenges that are ahead of us. There are physically not enough people to provide the kind of care that our elderly need. There are physically not enough people. And so we're needing to tap into the greatest innovation that we have. And AI is one of those that can really help us. In terms of the AI momentum globally, McKinsey surveyed 2,000 organizations around the world and found that about 58% were adopting AI. PwC also has a really fascinating study where they compared organizations who were using AI and found, to those who weren't, and found that those who used AI, the more AI they used, the more benefits they experienced. Benefits such as higher customer satisfaction, higher profitability, faster decision-making, more innovative products and services, and the list goes on. 58% of the world is starting that journey in terms of AI. You may wonder where Australia sits on that ranking. If we look at the IBM AI Adoption Index, 24%. If we look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics survey, 2019 to 2020, I can't wait for the update, 2%. 7,000 Australian businesses were surveyed and to ask them how many were using AI, and 2% said yes. And there's a big asterisk. I realize I'm in an academic institution. Maybe the person who completed the survey didn't know, but that in itself is actually an indicator of how strategic AI is to the organization. Maybe we have a bigger population of SMEs, and we do. Proportionally, Australia and our region has much bigger proportional representation of SMEs than larger organizations. But that also gives us a hint that SMEs are not really getting the kind of support needed to experience the AI benefits. Australia's standing in AI really matters. It really matters because it's the leading indicator of the global competitive advantage of Australia's businesses. So it's not about AI for technology's sake, it's actually about the outcomes it creates. And when we see that businesses who are using AI are experiencing better outcomes, profitability, customer satisfaction, that means that if we are not, then we're just not going to be competitive in the long term. And so that is why, again, it's exciting to see more institutes, more momentums being established, and UNSW AI Institute and the strong industry connection that is represented paves the path towards that. We have all of the ingredients that are needed to continue this acceleration. We have world-leading capability. In fact, we're leading the world in robotics, computer vision, quantum, responsible AI. We were amongst the world leaders to actually launch Australia's AI ethics principles. We were amongst those early movers on that front. And the momentum has kept accelerating with the ACOLA report, the Australian Human Rights reports. And as we traveled Australia during our National AI Centre listening tour, we also found that most AI innovation and research organizations also had investment in responsible AI researchers. So this momentum is building, and we have those ingredients to continue that acceleration. There's one more element, which is trust. I spent 8 years in the US, and I just recently returned in January. And you know, there is nothing like a fresher pair of eyes to actually see your home with. And what I've found is that trust is actually embedded in our culture as Australians. We believe in equitable and inclusive opportunities. We believe in a fair go, that everyone should have the ability to have a fair go. And in all of these reports I shared, ACOLA, Human Rights Commissioner research, it not only highlights that trust is a critical factor to AI adoption and for customers and consumers and populations to trust AI systems, but it also indicates a second thing, a much more important thing. It indicates that Australians have a higher benchmark of trust. We actually expect much more accountability from the technology, from also organizations and businesses that are around us, from the agencies that are within our realms. We have this higher benchmark of trust, and it has, to some extent, slowed some innovation, which is why we sometimes lag in adoption of the emerging tech. But if we really embrace this cultural strength that we have, if we really embraced it and leaned in, it could actually help us lift the benchmarks of our own innovation. So if we're aware of it, we lean in, lift the benchmarks, it could serve as a differentiator of Australia's approach to innovation and AI. Because once we're aware of it, then we can wield it as a strength. And so I really see this path already taking shape in terms of paving towards responsible and inclusive AI. And the UNSW AI Institute is coming such a long way to bring together the various expertise across faculty, across different experiences, and with that connection with industry. My hope is that as we create amazing new things, as we discover those new paths, I hope we can also pave paths towards responsible and inclusive AI, especially the practices. How do we actually do it? So that in that process, we empower all of us to be shaping the future with visions of doing better rather than replicating any of the biases from the past that might be latent in our data. So how do we develop those tools to shape our world with a vision for doing better? Now, apparently there's going to be some questions. And I've left quite a lot of time so that we can get the questions in.
Hi, hello? Okay, hear me. Hi, Stella. Eitan here. Nice to see you face to face.
Nice to see you.
A question about the institute, the center, the National AI Center. Can you elaborate a bit about your mission and what exactly you're trying to achieve and how you go about it?
Absolutely. In fact, I will share two things that have inspired what we do at the National AI Center. I shared that Australia has a lot of strength and expertise in AI. Ironically, we're also below global average for community understanding of AI, broad community understanding of AI. So this is a really interesting polarization. We have the expertise, but the broad community is not really understanding what AI is and the benefits it can contribute. Another really high contrast is we're relatively highly ranked in terms of AI research, 5th in the world, which is tremendous for a country of our size, 5th in the world. But 11th in the world in terms of the economic impact that those AI technologies are bringing to the commercial sector. So again, seeds of fantastic thought leadership and expertise. How do we create those benefits for businesses and communities? And so the National AI Center has been established to really help activate AI benefits at scale, to help more businesses adopt AI responsibly, to help more individuals find their career paths and understanding in AI, and then help to create a vibrant ecosystem of AI across Australia. In fact, even though the National AI Center was just established in January, we're not naive. It's not the first AI research, innovation, or organization in Australia. There's a really rich ecosystem, so our priority is really to amplify the successes that each AI organization across Australia has. And so front and center, it's about amplification. It's about storytelling. It's about helping businesses experience the benefits of AI and also helping more of the community be part of this journey.
Hi, Stella. Simon Longstaff.
Hi, Simon.
There's lots of talk about the application of AI to assist in business, but there's a whole world of community groups and not-for-profits who could benefit considerably, but it's almost impossible because of the affordability to have access to it. Do you see a way in which the power of AI might be liberated to some extent so that those less wealthy groups can also make use of it too?
That is an incredibly important question. I don't have an answer for it, but it is top of mind. And we recently launched three think tanks as National AI Center, one for responsible AI, one for diversity and inclusion in AI, and another one for AI at scale. And something that we were very mindful of is ensuring that we have community organizations who are also part of each of these think tanks, because we recognize there's a large disparity in the experiences and benefits that communities are experiencing and able to tap into when it comes to AI, as well as not-for-profit organizations. And so we want to find the answers to that. I don't have the answer, but hopefully through the process we come to a better outcome. I should have had more slides. There aren't enough questions. Oh Yeah, Toby, go ahead. Toby has a much better answer than I do, Toby.
No, I don't, but I just want to say that many of us working here at UNSW AI are very aware of Simon's concern. I think that's an incredibly important role a university can work with. If it's an application of AI that is of business potential, well, then business has got the money to do it. And indeed, a lot of our focus will be on doing that. And as an example, I have a number of projects. I would thank Google for their support. We have 2 Google grants as part of their AI for Good program, working with 2 charities, Info Exchange and Mothers to Mothers, 2 charities that helping them adopt AI in a way that they would not be able to afford, courtesy of the tech industry's foresight to help support us through that. So I think that's a really important role for universities, that we can go to places where there isn't perhaps the commercial opportunity. I said I was going to help answer the question.
Morning, Stella. Christina Larkin from EY. Hi. I've got a question for you. One of the things that we often see with clients and in the broader community, as you mentioned, is there's a lot of amplification of the negative and adverse impacts of AI. And that sometimes can skew, I guess, people's perception of what AI is. What do you see as the role as of the National AI Centre to help balance that out and talk about some of the positive and exciting aspects of AI to balance out some of the negative, I guess, messages that we hear in the media?
I think it's actually a role of anyone who is in the AI space to amplify the positive storytelling. Unfortunately, we've done it to ourselves. We tend to click on the negative stories more than the positive stories. And so we are seeing a negative leaning bias in the media. Quite often it will capture those headlines. And so as part of activating the fantastic benefits that AI can bring to our communities, I think it's on us across all of the centres, UNSW, AI Institute, National AI Centre, many AI organisations, to really continue being relentless in amplifying those stories, bringing more people along, show the outcomes. In fact, outcome centricity is one of the fundamental ways that we can cut through the noise that's out there. If we can show the tangible outcome that an AI use case or an AI innovation has delivered, that can really help us. There's also something about being unified as Australia in our AI storytelling. We are a relatively small country across a large land, and that can really create silos and separation for us. And so really being mindful of how we support this positive storytelling, how we are generous with our encouragement. There's a little bit of a skepticism in the Australian culture where it might lead you to maybe scroll past some of the stories and not necessarily like and engage. But I would suggest that this is exactly what we need right now, is to be generous with our support for positive stories, to be generous with our support for innovation, to support Australia's AI innovation landscape, because we need to break through and get to the positive outcomes. And when there are so many players in the world all chasing for those positive outcomes and to accelerate and be the leaders in AI adoption and AI innovation, we really need to rally together. Thank you so much for the questions.
Thank you kindly, Stella Solar. If that's not enough AI for you, don't worry, because we're going to hear a presentation by Peter Bartlett, co-head of the Google Research Australia, established as part of Google's $1 billion Digital Future Initiative. He's also a professor of computer science and statistics at the University of California, Berkeley, where he is director of the Foundations of Data Science Institute. Time allowing, at the end, he may also take some questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Peter Bartlett.
All right, thanks very much. So, first of all, of course, congratulations for the launch of this AI Institute. It's very exciting. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm delighted to be giving a talk. I was asked to speak about research in AI. This is joint work with Phil Long, who's also at Google, Gabor Legoshi at Pompeu Fabra, and Alex Sigler, who's at UC Berkeley. In terms of the science of AI, when you read about these huge successes that AI has brought us in areas like natural language processing and computer vision and robotics, and as we're hearing more and more in applications across all of the sciences and society, a lot of those things are really built on the foundations of deep learning. So deep neural networks have been the technology behind this amazing performance. But there, of course, they have their drawbacks. There are many things that we'd like to improve about deep learning. We've been thinking about designing machine learning methods for a long time, and you know, many of the issues that arise there have their trade-offs. I guess the fundamental issues, I'll bring up three. One of them is an issue of representation. You know, if I want to use a deep network to translate from one language to another, or to recognize objects in an image, then there's just the question of, do I have, with that network, is there some setting of the parameters? Is some way to represent the mapping that I want? There's a question of optimization. This is an algorithmic question. If I go out and gather an enormous amount of data to train my network to solve that problem, you know, am I then able to find a setting of the parameters that in all of these images of trucks recognize that's a truck? In these images of frogs, say that's a frog. You know, it's a question of, an algorithmic question of efficiently finding a good fit to training data. And there's a statistical question of, okay, I've done well on my training set, but now when I go and deploy that system, is it going to be able to recognize objects in those images, or translate new sentences that have never been seen before? So these are the issues, and there are, you know, all kinds of trade-offs between them. One of the really surprising things about deep learning is that in some sense it breaks the, we're skipping ahead. In some sense it breaks the rules. You know, there are many surprises that come up. We're very, very accustomed to thinking about rich classes to solve this representation question. Maybe there aren't, the behavior of deep networks is not so surprising there. On the optimization side, there are some big surprises. You know, we're classically accustomed to formulating our machine learning problems as convex optimization problems. You know, it's a family of objectives where we have these tools to very efficiently solve that optimization problem. Deep learning methods, on the other hand, use pretty simple approaches, generic approaches, to optimize what is an ugly, non-convex objective, and somehow, in practice, they do that very efficiently. And you know, I have to say, you know, this is rather mysterious. It does seem to be tied to over-parameterization, to having many more parameters than you have in the training sample for one of these learning problems. Another surprise appears in the statistical issue of generalization. And there we're used to being very careful about keeping control of the complexity of the functions that we're using and trading off the fit to the training data to the complexity of these functions. In deep learning, you know, all of that statistical wisdom we've learned goes out the window, and there's this phenomenon that I want to talk about today, where these networks can actually find a perfect fit to noisy training data and still predict well. Okay, so that's where we're going with this talk. But I thought it'd be good to start just giving you a bit of a reminder of linear regression. So maybe it'd be interesting to ask, who learned some linear regression here at UNSW? A nice show of hands, great. Okay, so you know, it's really, we're just thinking about a prediction problem, and we'll start with a cartoon. You know, rather than predicting from one sentence in English to its translation, we're thinking about, you know, predicting, given some features of something, predict something else. You know, my cartoon example is predicting shoe size. Okay, so maybe I have some features about a person, and I want to predict what their shoe size is. A silly example, but it's nice and simple. and maybe the feature I have is height. I mean, this represents the features of a sentence in English, and the prediction on the y-axis represents, you know, whatever decision I'm making as a consequence of that, and maybe that's the translation of that sentence into another language. Okay, so it may be that there's a best prediction. Given somebody's height, there's a best prediction of their shoe size. But of course, that's not enough information. Presumably, there's going to be a lot of noise around that best prediction, and maybe that best prediction is a straight line. And you know, here's a collection of data, you know, in this contrived cartoon example of the light blue line is showing the best prediction given that feature, and of course, there's some noise on top of that. Okay, so what if I wanted to learn to make that prediction based on, you know, what features I have? Well, I would go and get a training set, like these points represent individuals that have a certain height and a certain shoe size. And then I would come up with a good fit to that training data. Okay, what if I had a very limited sample? Perhaps if I had only 2 points, right, 2 examples. Well, then you might expect to do a terrible job, right? If I had these 2 points, for instance, right, then you know, I would come up with a good fit to that data, and I, of course, have a terrible prediction of the quantity I'm trying to estimate given those features. So, you know, the rule of thumb here is I have 2 parameters, the slope and the intercept, and I'm really making full use of those parameters. If I don't have an amount of data that's large compared to the number of parameters, I should expect to be in trouble. But thinking about just, you know, the simple linear case, counting parameters, you know, of course, things are much more nuanced than that, and in general, I should think about, you know, the amount of data that I have compared to the complexity of the prediction rule that I'm using. You know, here's an example of a particularly complex prediction rule that happens to get everything right on that training sample, right? But we shouldn't expect it to predict very accurately, you know, as a consequence. Okay. In some sense, this is the situation that we're in with deep networks. Deep networks, it turns out, can be trained to 0 training loss, even on in regression settings like this, but still give near state-of-the-art predictive accuracy, right? Even when we know that there's noise in the problem, which is a really striking thing. So these graphs are from work that a group at Google did several years ago now. On the x-axis of both graphs is the level of noise that's been added to the training data. On the left, no noise. On the right, essentially complete noise. There's no information in the data about the quantity you want to predict. And if you just look at the bottom graph, the test error there is a measure of performance. Small is, you know, down low is good, up high is bad. As we add noise, the performance degrades, but it degrades slowly. That's really striking because every point on these graphs, I mean, the top one is showing this. For every point on these graphs, you're actually getting a perfect fit to that noisy data. So even though we're doing that and we shouldn't expect good performance, we're getting good predictive accuracy, even though we've added noise. And this has been seen in a bunch of settings. There's none of this classical trade-off that we expect between the fit to the training data and the complexity of the prediction rule that we're working with. It's certainly overfitting the data. We know there's noise, and we're getting even so, we're getting a perfect fit to the data. But that overfitting seems to be benign in the sense that the prediction accuracy is still very good. Okay, so we don't have this trade-off between fit and complexity that we classically expect. We teach our undergraduates, you know, you shouldn't be using interpolating fits of this kind. You know, this is a bad idea. We'll get bad performance, bad predictive accuracy if we do that. And you can find all these quotes from the kind of classic textbooks. That's a picture of my bookshelf, by the way. Okay, so, you know, this is kind of really striking. It's a new statistical phenomenon that deep learning has revealed, and, you know, I have to say, even at this moment, we don't completely understand how this works. There's been an enormous amount of investigation of this phenomenon over the last few years. It's been, you know, really very exciting direction. The point of view I want to tell you about is in a survey paper. The intuition here is for the cases that we understand, where this benign overfitting phenomenon occurs, we can break down the prediction rule into 2 pieces. One that's simple, a simple piece that's simple in terms of classical statistical learning theory. You know, we really know what's going on. There's a conventional trade-off between the fit to the data and the complexity of that piece of the prediction rule, and one that's complex. You know, really think of it as a spiky component that's good for fitting the data, but plays no role in predictive accuracy. Doesn't help, certainly, but doesn't harm prediction. So that's the kind of general intuition behind these benign overfitting phenomenon. Okay, so I'm going to throw up an equation. They say lose half the audience. But I'll describe it in words. This is one of two examples I want to give where this arises. This is a classical non-parametric statistical method called Nadaraya-Watson kernel smoothing. And the idea here is very simple. If you give me a new individual with some features, and I want to go ahead and predict their shoe size again in my cartoon, you know, I have that X, and I want to use the labels of all of the training examples just by coming up with a combination of them, and I weigh those labels, those Ys, the shoe sizes, according to how similar this new individual is to the individuals in my training set. And the way that I compare the new X to the XIs, the examples in the training set, you know, involves some sort of a kernel, some sort of a notion of similarity between those X's. So it turns out, I mean, this is a very classical and simple non-parametric method. Turns out if you work with a crazy kernel, you know, a similarity function that goes to infinity at 0. So as you get more and more similar to somebody in the training set, you put all your weight on that individual. Then you're going to have a prediction that interpolates the training data. All right, so you have one of these overfitting cases arising, but if you design that spike so that it's really narrow, then it doesn't have much of an impact anywhere, except right at the training examples, you know, and you can come up with an example where you can see you're interpolating the data, but it really doesn't have an impact on average on all across the range of features that you see. So this is work that Belkin, Rachlin, and Sibakov had showed, you know, even that you could get optimal performance with such crazy kernels. All right, and there, of course, we've got somehow. All right, there we go. We have this decomposition into a simple piece that is the usual kind of kernel smoothing that we do with these things, and a spiky piece that's just due to that spike in the middle that actually plays the role of letting us fit the data but doesn't have any impact on predictive accuracy. Okay, and the second example I want to give is in the setting of linear regression. So the X's here are these features, the height in my cartoon, the Y is the response. We're making linear predictions, so we're weighting those features in order to predict the response. And we're assuming that the truth really is linear with some noise on top. You know, just like the picture I showed in the cartoon of this linear relationship between height and our best prediction of shoe size. So in this case, we can get a crisp characterization of when we'll have this benign overfitting phenomenon for the smallest linear function that fits a training set exactly. What we need is some directions. Think of them as features. If we have a collection of features, think of it as a small set of features that are helpful for prediction and a large set of features that are in some sense, you know, really unimportant. There's very little variation in the data in those other features, in those other directions. And you know, that's the same split into a simple piece, this low dimensional piece, and a complex piece that's just good for fitting the data and not good for prediction but doesn't harm prediction. In some sense, our noise is spread across many, many different directions. So this is the same sort of decomposition in the linear regression case. A simple piece, the low dimensional piece, and a really complex piece. Okay, one other kind of quirk of deep networks that turns out to be closely related is this phenomenon of adversarial examples, this sensitivity to perturbations. So this is, you know, another group of researchers that observed this, that you can have a deep network, for instance, one that's trained to recognize images, that produces, so give it a new example, an image of a panda. It can confidently predict correctly that that's a panda. But then you can find a small perturbation of that image, an imperceptible perturbation, so that the deep network now confidently misclassifies this example. And this is quite a generic phenomenon, right? So there's this huge sensitivity to carefully chosen perturbations to the inputs. And you know, we have to work quite hard to avoid this sort of behavior in practice. So it turns out this is closely related to the benign overfitting phenomenon. In the linear case, you know, because in some sense that label noise is injected into our parameter estimates, we're going to be able to find a direction. You know, don't worry about the specifics, but if we have good performance in the sense that we're nearly optimally predicting, then it turns out that implies that we're going to have huge sensitivity. So if we're within alpha of the best we can do in one of these linear regression settings with an interpolating prediction rule, then there's this sensitivity goes to infinity as alpha goes to 0. So this is, you know, exactly the adversarial example kind of phenomenon. So having this benign overfitting leads to that sort of sensitivity. Okay. All right. So just to summarize, you know, this benign overfitting phenomenon is far from the classical statistical regime that we're used to thinking about, where we trade off the fit to the training data with the complexity of the prediction rule that we're using. In linear regression, we can think about it, we can characterize it quite precisely as associated with over-parameterization, with having many, many parameters and somehow having many, many unimportant directions in parameter space. So we've got over-parameterization that in some sense has to be redundant in order for the benign overfitting to occur. But as I say, it leads to this sensitivity to these small, carefully chosen perturbations. There have been some, you know, we've done some work in this direction of understanding the same phenomenon in deep networks. The big question there is, you know, are we going to see the same kind of a split into a simple piece and a complex piece? And just to say, you know, why does this kind of scientific question matter? So deep networks rely on this over-parameterization, seems to be an essential feature, certainly for this phenomenon. If we could avoid that, if we could find the simple piece and optimize it directly, then we could do things much more efficiently. So having this over-parameterization property means that as we go out and gather these enormous data sets to get better and better performance in prediction problems, the amount of computation, the amount of energy that we're spending grows with the product of the sample size and the number of parameters. Okay, so that's growing as the square of the sample size. So we're spending a huge amount of energy in training these things when, you know, the prospect is that there's actually something much simpler there that we could be doing. We could have an enormous saving on the energy and still get the same kind of efficiency, the same sort of effectiveness at solving, you know, all of these problems that have had such a huge impact, but at a much lower cost in computation and in energy.
We're not going to have time for questions, unfortunately, but what a riveting presentation. Thank you so much, Professor Bartlett. That's quite a lot to digest so far, which is why we're giving you time to have a well-deserved coffee break. It's going to be 20 minutes, and we ask that you grab your coffee or your pastries or whatever and bring them in here. There's another function going on next door, and we don't want to. We know you guys like to talk, and we don't want to, and we should talk. We don't want to make it affect others. Now look, while you're getting your coffee, you're also going to be able to look around at the showcase posters we've got here, or perhaps enjoy a demonstration of UNSW's world-beating RoboCup soccer team. That should be fun. Or as Toby Walsh has remarked a couple of times, you could pick up one of his books towards the back. He might even sign it for you, you never know. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back at 11:50. Please enjoy. Thank you. These mics are very sensitive, but they're not sensitive enough to pick up the Doctor Who theme that I was playing earlier to try and get everyone to come in. Go figure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We have a smorgasbord of industry leaders next who will make presentations that you won't want to miss. Let me introduce you to them. They appear in sequence. To begin, Dr. Grace Chung, co-head of Google Research Australia and engineering lead at Google Australia. Dr. Tomas Bernards, Director of Strategic Researcher Engagement at NVIDIA, Asia Pacific, Europe and Middle East. Dr. Peter Bailey, Machine Learning Lead in Search and Recommendations at the Australian unicorn Canva. And finally, Ms. Angela Kim, Director of Data Analytics and AI at Deloitte, and an ambassador for women in AI in Australia. These distinguished industry heavyweights will each be speaking for about 8 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a hearty welcome. Grace, you can start.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I will figure out how to do this. Oh, it worked. Very exciting. Yep, I'm Grace, and thank you for having me. It's really real honor to be here. I am the head of Google Research in Australia, and I'm also the site lead for engineering for AUNZ, and he's my friend, an AI-generated kangaroo. All right, a little bit about me in a very short, sort of 1 minute. I'm also an alum of UNSW, and I have to say the best years of my life was spent at UNSW. I had a really great time. I won't tell you actually how many years I was here. I just tried to extend my undergraduate life as long as I could. So I can remember many, many years of just hanging out on the lawn and the library, and it was great. And then after that, I left the country and I did my postgraduate degree at MIT in speech and natural language, and I have a background in CS at MIT, and I worked in dialogue systems. After a while, after a stint in the US, I came back and I also worked at UNSW for a very brief while before joining Google, and I became a software engineer. I kind of learnt software engineering as I joined Google 14 years ago. Throughout the years, I've worked on many product areas. I've been exposed to a lot of different things, different products that we invest in at Google, and led teams. Most recently, I was an engineering lead in Chrome OS, which has a very big team in Sydney. A couple of years ago, I was appointed the engineering site lead for AUNZ, which means that I know a lot of the ins and outs of what's happening with our 1,000 strong engineering workforce in Sydney. So if you want to know all the gossip, I have it. A few months ago, I was appointed head of research for Google Australia, and that started in around April, May this year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, is this gonna work? Yeah, and many of you probably know the story about engineering at Google in Australia. It all started off with the Maps team. A couple of Danish guys invented Maps, and Google acquired them, and they didn't want to move to the US, So they grew their Australian team in Sydney, and that became the first engineering team in Google Australia. And through the decades, we have loads of different products being developed at a core level in Sydney, including search, Chrome OS, photos, payments. Of course, we have an enormous cloud team. Fuchsia, it's an open source operating system. Taskmate, you may or may not have heard of it. It's an app developed in Australia, and it's been launched in India. And Fitbit, just a small acquisition we made a couple of years ago. And now we have a Fitbit team in Australia, which is pretty exciting. And Google Research, yay. So AI has been part of the fabric of engineering in Australia for many years. So it hasn't just started, right? So we've got AI and machine learning engineers embedded in all of our product teams. And I'm just going to talk very briefly about the latest launch we've had. It's a human presence sensor in a Chromebook, in a Lenovo Chromebook that is out in store shelves. And what they did was they embedded a low-powered camera, a very cheap and low-resolution camera, and developed the machine learning models with very small memory budget, like 256K, really small, and did really clever things with that to make it work, to detect humans for the laptop, so that when you walk, it unlocks when you walk towards it, and it locks when you walk away from it. And also, ultimately, it alerts you if there is someone behind you. So it's called second-person detection. In industry, we call that shoulder surfing. So if there's somebody shoulder surfing behind you, it can warn you. This was all developed full stack in the Google Sydney, from the hardware to the software. So it's pretty cool. We're pretty proud of it. It's a multi-year project. And it's very privacy preserving. Like, given that the camera is really low quality, and it's very well sandboxed, it's privacy and security preserving. Okay. All right. And of course, you know that in November last year, we announced the Digital Future Initiative. And the idea behind that is that Google is going to invest in Australia and invest in Australia's digital capabilities and give back to the Australian economy. And that is the whole point of the Digital Future Initiative. It has 3 pillars. The first is investing in infrastructure, in particular the cloud infrastructure. And a very core part of that is investing in a research lab, and the latest of many research labs across Google. And the third is building partnerships with Australia's leading organizations, from CSIRO to across our universities. And if you didn't know, Google Research has thousands, like 3,000 plus people across the world, and new locations are popping up all the time. A few years ago, there was a lab started in Ghana, and 4 years ago, maybe there was a lab in Bangalore, and the latest is one in Sydney, Australia. Unfortunately, I'm going to say very little about Google Research Australia today, other than I'm really excited that myself and Peter Bartlett are now co-leading this effort that hopefully will grow to a full-size lab in a short number of years. Our goals, first and foremost, are to collaborate with our universities, help nurture the talent locally in Australia, nurture the students, encourage people to do PhDs in computer science and work in AI and contribute back to the economy. The second goal for us is to push the envelope, push the frontiers of computer science and AI for the world and for the field of AI. That is investing in forward-looking and bold research, and that's what we're in the business of. Third, we're interested in things that are of interest to Australia and Australians, topics that we care about, topics that will eventually help Australia. And finally, and if there is innovations that we come up with, transfer to our products, that's great. That is, of course, like a nice to have. There's actually more bums in seats than there are on the slides, but I couldn't fit them on the slide. But this is the key personnel, myself and Peter, Steve, who's a professor at ANU, Ben, and my Wombat friend. This is an AI-generated Wombat from our party system. You can go to the party system and take a look at the cool images that are generated from long textual prompts. This is the latest AI that we've generated. And to be completely shameless, we're here to see who of the talents out there, and maybe your students, maybe your colleagues that you can recommend in coming to join our team. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me here. So I'll be showing you lots of moving pixels. Hopefully you're gonna like it. Okay, so we're gonna start about the GPU and NVIDIA's role in AI ecosystem. So as you know, GPUs were designed to push lots of colorful pixels on your screen in parallel. So that's how it started with parallel computing. It became as well general processors as you were going. So you could actually push huge arithmetic throughput through the GPU's cores as we speak. Then compared to CPU are designed for sequential kind of processing. When they run operating systems, they help you to drive daily works and so on, right? And now if you look at this plot, which shows performance of the CPUs going up to 2010 in kind of linear scale, logarithmic scale, that basically matches Moore's law, right? So we know though. But if you look at the GPUs, they're evolving even faster. If you're looking, the CPUs are kind of, like not going that fast anymore, and GPUs are still going much, much faster. So the gap is becoming even more as we speak. And this actually drove lots of innovations that NVIDIA was pushing through in deep learning space. So you could see the ecosystem of modern AI is growing. You can see the whole cloud of companies collaborating many different things. And we can talk about this forever. But before we jump into the AI and connect the simulations, I wanted to talk to you, wanted to show you I am AI video from NVIDIA. Many use cases that our GPUs are powering, and we are open for collaborations with the research ecosystem, so feel free to talk to me, we can talk about that. But if we're talking about evolutions of AI and where is it going, we believe in the future of our metaverse. So metaverse is actually connecting everything together. So you have internet, the traditional internet in here, then we have different techniques. NVIDIA AI, for instance, is supporting some of that, and NVIDIA Omniverse, which is the tool. I'm gonna show you some of the use cases in a second. So the virtual worlds and simulations are kind of a subset of what we're trying to do in space of connecting really AI with simulations to build very interactive digital twins, and we have very kind of engineering angles on that. So you're going to see some of the capabilities that Omniverse can do on my next slide, and I hope you enjoy that. And I'll tell you a bit more about that after that. And all of that runs in real time, by the way. So if you use our platforms and use Omniverse platform, which is open source for you to use, you can run all this stuff in real time. So basically, like whatever you're seeing here is photorealistic ATX scores that we have on our GPUs. And you can connect visualizations with simulations. That's the power of digital twins. And there are absolutely unlimited possibilities in your research space. Part of our drive sim, which is showing you capturing of the universe, then putting point clouds, reconstruction, and so on. So lots of examples. Now, if we talk about digital twins, of course, we build the 3D worlds, and we build operating virtual reality or operating digital twins. We can link them to simulations to do what-if scenarios and analyze that. But as well, we can, this is actually like one of the examples in BMW factory that we built. I wanted to show you that it's perhaps not playing. Can we try to? Sorry, it needs to be perhaps manually pushed.
BMW has continued building on the momentum of their Factory of
So
the
when you
Future
connect
initiative
AI
we showed
pipelines,
you earlier this year.
Simulation, then
On
you get
average, they produce one new
digital
vehicle every minute,
capabilities
expanding the initiative to now include digital twin projects at 3 additional factories, which total more than 6 million square meters. Meeting BMW's demands for continuous improvement and innovation requires simulation of complex production scenarios to speed output, increase agility, and optimize efficiency everywhere. NVIDIA Omniverse introduces new simulation capabilities everywhere BMW needs to make critical decisions and introduce automation. BMW and their partners have also been connecting new users and tools to expand the Omniverse ecosystem. Spanning every aspect of the BMW Factory of the Future, Omniverse allows BMW to collaborate and simulate from the entire plant level down to comprehensive engineering detail.
And you can use it as well in your lab. So now if we go further, we could think about digital twin on a larger scale. So this is our ERF2, which is basically simulating large-scale ERF digital twin. So this is something which is linked to as well our supercomputer that NVIDIA is building. And can tell you a bit more about that, about our upcoming event that you can join in a second as well. And last but not the least, I wanted to show you this thing, which is basically called instant nerve neural radiance fields, which is basically something that inspired me lately. It was #1 paper at SIGGRAPH. Basically, if you're doing any kind of, like physical universe to digital capture, what you do, you just do lots of photographs and do photogrammetry reconstruction, right? On traditional GPUs like RTX 8000, when you have around 150 photographs, it takes 2 to 3 days to reconstruct the 3D meshes and surfaces. With Instant Nerve, you can do it in 2 minutes. And I was planning to do it live, but it only 8 minutes, so next time perhaps. But you can see this beautiful visualizations of the unicorn. That was basically from my colleague that is working with me. We were connected on the Teams, and I said, oh, we have this lovely unicorn. Can you do 8 seconds video around the unicorn? He captured the video, and in 2 minutes we had this reconstruction. So if you're interested in that, happy to tell you a bit more about these techniques. And the very last slide, I believe, I wanted to congratulate UNSW AI Institute for its launch. Exciting from all of us, from NVIDIA. And if you're interested to seeing a bit more and hearing a bit more in details about the techniques or animations, parts of animations, and how to do certain stuff, please do photograph of this QR code and register to the conference using the code which is there. And it brings you, we have this conference running virtually next week. So literally now, and you'll be able to be part of that, of course. I strongly encourage everyone. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll have the slide deck appearing. It's a slightly different presentation to the PDFs. So firstly, thanks Flora for the invitation to speak and to be a part of the panel here today. It's very exciting to be a part of this event to launch the AI Institute at the UNSW. I'd also like to acknowledge that we meet here today on land of the Bedegal and Gadigal people, traditional custodians of this land that was never ceded. I pay my respects to their leaders, past and present, and extend that to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are present here today. I'll be talking about 4 things today, so let's just jump straight in. Firstly, some information about Canva, which you may or may not have heard of. So Canva is a global online visual communications platform designed to empower the world to design. And it's a beautiful way to create designs for presentations, such as the one here today, or whiteboards, which we launched recently, infographics, videos, t-shirts, websites, and social media graphics. We're really on a mission to empower the world to design. Just some quick statistics about the company as of about the middle of this year. We just celebrated our 9th birthday, so we're probably not really a startup anymore. We have 3,000 plus employees spread around the world. And we're profitable, which is a good situation to be in at the current time. And we have over $1 billion in revenue from about 9 million plus subscribers who pay us money. And we have about 85 million monthly active users. And that's spread across 190 countries using over 100 languages. So far, we've had about 11 billion designs created using Canva, including over 800 million presentations and 400 million videos. Just some key messages regarding what we think is important in terms of empowering the world to design. We have a lot more information coming up at our Canva Create event tomorrow. If you aren't already registered, you can do that online, and I encourage you to do that. So our sort of founding principle was really that the world is becoming an increasingly visual place, as Thomas was demonstrating with NVIDIA. GPUs to the rescue to helping create some of those beautiful images on graphics. And our products continue to evolve as our vision of an all-in-one visual communications platform comes to life. But really what I think is kind of critical is the team and the culture behind it. It was one of the reasons I joined Canva. The founders actually are on this mission to create a 100-plus year company. And coming from Australia, that's a really ambitious goal. And they really are very values-led. One of the things that Melanie Perkins, the CEO, often says is that we've come a long way, but we still believe we're only 1% of the way there. Flora asked us to discuss an exciting area of AI, and these days, like search makes heavy use of machine learning and AI technologies, though that wasn't always the case. And I'm a person who's been interested in these connections between humans and information via text for 3 decades now. And at Canva, I've got the sort of fortune of being able to go from this kind of text world, which occupied sort of a long part of my career, to now this much more visual world. And what I think is super interesting in the last year is that the emergence of generative image models are demonstrating that we can bridge this gap that exists when we're trying to articulate our information need or our visual need. That might be in our head, and we've got to map it into some typically short query text. It turned out historically it was actually really hard to process long queries. And what we're seeing with generative image models is that's getting easier. Whether people want to spend lots of time describing what they want is a different matter, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And just to be clear, what I'm not proposing is that we replace search with generating images on demand. What I'm saying is that the generative image models actually encode these relationships between quite complex visual concepts and style ideas, and they do it incredibly effectively. And so they may be beneficial as part of matching or re-ranking phases of a layered search architecture. And just to give sort of concrete examples of what people might be doing, here is a person and they're thinking about their current work task, which might be like, I need an appetizing photo of a steak dinner for an article about red meat consumption. And here's a picture from the Canva library on the left, which is kind of representative of what there might be in their mind's eye, given that sort of information visual communication need. But today what we do typically with the search engine, we just type something like steaks. And we expect the search engine to come back with a whole lot of responses to the term steaks, and hopefully it would somehow guess somewhere in that what we were truly looking for. And we might go through a series of like scrolling activities or requerying activities as we went along. So if we want to describe that image a little bit more in detail, if this, in fact, was what we were thinking, we might go a little bit further. We might say something like a photo of a perfectly cooked steak, partly cut up. And what I'm using here is the DALL-E 2 image generation model, just to represent, again, the embeddings that are encoded in these generative image models. So we have these generative image embeddings, which correspond to that slightly longer set of text being created there. And you can see, like, yes, it's really kind of nailed that steak concept quite elegantly, and it's been cut up, which is great. And we've got some similar content to the embeddings in the index that we have at Canva. But it kind of didn't really match what we're doing, right? So we're still some way away. So what if we add like a whole lot more text? And now what we're seeing is like, yet again, we're starting to get much closer to that original concept. Again, we're seeing similar content to the embeddings in the index, so we can do this kind of matching. Just one final one, it still didn't really kind of nail that sort of nice sort of blue stone feeling to it. So if we just add blue-gray stone background, suddenly we've kind of again transformed that image. So again, what we're seeing is just like these models encode these quite complex concepts in ways that we could make use of from a search standpoint. The other thing that's interesting to talk about here is that this starts to feel like a bit of a conversation. And conversational search, for those of us in the information retrieval community, is actually something that we've all been really interested in for about 15 plus years. And it turns out it's a really hard problem to actually address. However, I think there's some really interesting opportunities here to work more with these things as we start to understand how to interact, and that's where the science of user experience and human-computer interaction become really critical. So just onto some open problems. Just people tasks when they're actually working in a kind of design operation. They don't just go there to search like a Google or a Bing, they're going there to complete their visual design. So they have a whole series of what we would think of as subtasks that are going along the way as part of their editing activities. So we have mixtures of search or recommendations and then followed by these editor actions. And so that's what we're seeing on Canva. For me, I like to say search is life. Certainly it has been for my career on and off. And the first two types of activities of these hard open problems, query understanding and ranking, they've always been really hard. We have to try and understand from very little text what you really mean. And then we have to get a whole lot of results out of an index and show them to you usually in about a second, which is a crazy short amount of time. But Google set that benchmark in the late 90s and everyone's actually had to meet that since then. The other thing that is really important to us from Canva's perspective is kind of result diversity. So how do we get a diverse set of results being shown? And again, result diversity is something that's been investigated by search people for the last 20 years or so. Two specific problems for Canva are these kind of communicative intent of people and thinking of designs as a stateful conversation. So the actual canvas that people are working and developing their things starts to act as a kind of stateful activity going on. From the communicative intent side, this is a great example. People often will say something like bees. When they actually try to visually communicate the concept of bees, not only will they choose bees, they'll also choose these honeycomb objects, which makes perfect sense in a visual thing, but honeycombs aren't bees. So that's an interesting difference from, say, a text search problem. Just closing with some super hard challenges in this space from our standpoint. So multi-page designs like this presentation add this extra level of complexity and structure that you have to try and wrap your head around in all the user modeling metrics and data sets. We, as an organization, support both, creating, doing search over public assets and also over your own private or enterprise assets in an organization. One of the things that we've known for a long time is that finding new stuff is not the same as refinding old stuff. And typically what people are doing with their own personal stuff is to refine stuff they already know is there. Whereas trying to find new things like your steak photo, that's something you never created previously. And the last open challenge is this issue around localization, segmentation, and personalization. So how do we go about creating a really fantastic experience for you and you and you? In fact, every single person in this audience and all of our customers around the world, how can we do that in a really beautiful way that is delightful and not creepy? And every single problem gets actually much, much harder once you move into personalization. Everything from modeling, data sets, metrics, explanations, debugging, caching. Caching is usually what kills you, interestingly enough, because that's how you scale to huge numbers of people, is to actually cache most results. And if every result is going to be different, you can't cache those results any longer. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much. It's coming.
It is a really pleasure, and it's a very special moment that actually the launching AI Institute, because I'd like to share my little story that just before COVID, I had opportunity to visit Montreal AI Institute because we had this opportunity working on the project, and we traveled and we saw that how so sorry about the background noises. I don't know where it's coming from. Hope it's not from my tummy, It's a bit hungry, but, I don't think it's that loud. So, when I think about the AI Institute, the opportunity when I was in Montreal just before COVID 2019, and, I had an opportunity to meet the father of AI, Yoshua Bengio, in Milan, and attended CIFA, the biannual the meetup there where the government and academics and industry leaders come, and they literally brainstorm together to understand how AI can be used to help all different streams of work that the country Canada is run. So by just watching, attending half of the workshop to discuss all this AI, the leaders really brainstorming and whiteboarding literally about how to help, how to use AI to improve the citizens' health, education system, and also community. And it was really really mind-blowing experience. And that's why when I heard that UNSW AI Institute launch, I was super excited. And when I was invited, I decided I need to share this story because it sounds really amazing, and already it's amazing first step that UNSW is taking, and I cannot wait to hear more amazing stories coming from AI Institute. And a big congratulations to the team, and also amazing Professor Toby Walsh as well. I'm secretly a big fan of his, by the way, so I'm gonna get an autograph from the book after this session. So today I'd like to share about just two things short, because I really enjoyed talk from Grace and Thomas and Peter. By the way, I'm a big fan of Google and NVIDIA and Canva. And so today I want to talk about data and AI. Without data, we can't talk about AI. And I'd like to share about the project I led recently, Deloitte, about the data sharing, the Made Easy. So by 2030, the quantum computing will really limit the secure way of sharing the data with a normal, typical, traditional encryption method. So that's where we introduce homomorphic encryption. So I'd like to share about the few benefits why it's exciting, because people often tell me, Angela, how come you're talking about AI and you're saying it's exciting? It's exciting because what it can do for people and business and community and citizens. As you can see that, homomorphic encryption made all the data sharing much easier, and that enables the opportunity to, oh my God, this is very high. Luckily, I kind of remember the talking points, but I didn't realize it's gonna be this big wall. So the part about how to aggregate the data and to utilize, really monetize the data, even among the frenemies and industry competitors, actually enable to share the data for the common purpose. So one of the good example use case can be fraud. I remember when I was working for IAG, Insurance Australian Group, we are working on this project, how to bring all different industry partners in a safe manner to share data in a very safe way and then aggregated manner. There was a quite daunting task, and it was really hard to kick it off. Now it becomes reality. If you really want to have the same goal, for example, fraud, the fraud's instance is very small, low volume. So it makes it really hard to run the predictive model. And for that, there's a really opportunity. You can share the data in a very safe manner, and they will reduce the cost and increase the efficiency as well. It becomes very cost effective. And apart from the fraud, there's a lot of good use cases from like manufacturing industries and also even researchers and healthcare systems. You can really share the data in a safe manner. And speaking of the researchers, you can see that you can really use this opportunity to broaden your research and sharing, because sometimes the research topic can be quite sensitive, but in a very safe manner, you can share the research ideas and collaborate very efficiently to advance the research using the common goal and move forward in a more timely manner. And the next opportunity can be, oh, I missed it. Can I go back? Yep. So, and also another aspect is really safe intellectual property, the ecosystem. So you can see that, the common models, like, a lot of, ML models and AI models, traditionally, you have to be conscious about the model, but now it can be built in a cloud environment, and you can really run the model, even outsource the modeling process to the third-party provider in a safe environment, and you can actually collaborate to utilize the full, taking the full benefit outside of the organization, working with a third party or the vendors and other the teams you can collaborate. And the last point is around the encrypting the data in motion. So this is about full homomorphic encryption process. So you can really safely exchange the data, and you can, without encrypting, decrypting the data, you can actually access the data, you can run the model, do the computation, and you can build the actual ML model, and you can safely return so that only the person who owns the key can access it. So there's a huge opportunity. You can really leverage this great environment. So apart from this data sharing made easy, I'd like to talk about the Women in AI. This is another really passion project. I work with the global, do tank is not-for-profit community, and we work with 140 countries, and I lead the Australian chapter in APAC, and I work for the education program as well. So this is a really amazing opportunity that I'd like to say few people are here already who's been really supporting Women in AI initiative in the past 3 years continuously, and Women in AI, we believe in really try to promote, really inclusive and diverse the AI ecosystem, because we do believe in promoting more females. That really is the right thing to do, because not just ticking off the box exercise, rather we really want to empower half of the population in the world, because we believe in that, STEM education and everything, and all the project we work together. We really try to really empower the females and students and young professionals, and also all the professionals in a different stage of their careers, to empower them, really try to get into either AI professions field or advance their careers by supporting them. And one of the events we host is Women in AI Awards. I can see amazing the AI researchers already in this room, because we work with, we identify each year about 160 plus AI female researchers who's doing amazing work in the industry and academics area. And our goal is try to promote their profile and connect with a global opportunity so that we can really democratize AI by collaborating together. So you can see that, we want to really work with bringing all the minds together. And if you're interested, please go into Women in AI website. You can find it easily. And reach out to me if you want to have a further conversation. Thank you.
That was an unexpected ending. I was expecting you to take me somewhere, and suddenly you finished. Fantastic, well done, and right on time too. So excellent, excellent presentations, ladies and gentlemen. But we're going to get some more. We're going to get some more because we're going to have a panel discussion chaired by UNSW AI's Professor Flora Salim. Professor Salim is the inaugural Cisco Chair of Digital Transport at UNSW Sydney and Deputy Director of Engagement at UNSW AI. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Professor Salim and our panel.
So, thank you very much for that inspiring talk. Maybe let's just kick off this discussion by tell us a little bit about your first encounter or first love or first spark with AI. It could be many years ago. So who'd like to start? Grace.
Sure. Oh, is this working? Oh, my microphone's working. Exciting. Well, my background is not in AI, but I came from an era, it was like pre-AI era. So for my PhD, I was really interested in using linguistics and understanding, using knowledge to build into these systems. And neural network was this sort of corner community they were just building neural networks, and so I just took a class in that. So that was how I was just interested, but I wasn't interested in using neural networks for my PhD, for my own research. It was just a side thing, like I should know about this because this is important. But I was more interested in using other techniques. But ironically, of course, nowadays everything's changed.
Thank you. Do you want to continue, Thomas?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it was the second winter, AI winter. Okay, we'll start with that. So I was at the university and we had some courses, and it was like this famous professor, Richard Tadeuszewicz. I was studying in Poland, studying computational physics, and I had exam from AI, so basically like very simple neural networks with backpack propagation and like doing some very simple OCR on the letters. So that's how I started. But then not only after I finished my master's, I went to do my PhD in Japan, and we're doing lots of experiments with, I was doing like numerical simulations, simulating like flying frogs, levitating frogs, not really, but it was like more magnetohydrodynamics flows. I was trying to validate the correctness of the simulations with the experimental results. And we're using something called thermoliquid crystals. So thermoliquid crystals, they have very, very tiny, narrow kind of band, like 1 degree or 2 degrees only, and you couldn't expand it further. So using like very simple backpack propagation networks, 3-layered networks, super, super simple, because it was a long time ago before, all this deep neural nets. I was able to actually expand the visibility range for another degree. That was very, very outstanding. So that's how I started.
Yeah, great question. I think I date it first to the sort of mid-1980s. I had an Apple II with my family at home, and interacting with the chatbot Eliza, so some of you may have used that. And I sort of think of that as the first sort of AI system where a computer is trying to converse with us as humans, and obviously we know a lot about that. Later on, I actually had, in my honours year, a graduate of this university, Professor Robin Stanton, teaching me artificial intelligence and sort of classic symbolic AI in my honours year. I don't know that I fully understand it. I remember there was search over the trees in some parts of it, and maybe that pitched me into sort of more classical text search later on.
And Angela? Yeah. So my story was like, when I was working as an intern at CBA, I almost became actual analyst. So that's kind of, the direction where I was heading to. I'm glad, I didn't, stay that, way, because I was working in this team, and I was very lucky to meet amazing data scientists from China and India. There are some senior data scientists, and the way they build the model was quite fascinating. And I was really fascinated about, how that, predictive models can really actuate, and also how it can really help the business predict, acquiring, the relevant customers, and also retaining the right customers, and also understanding how to provide a different credit scoring for the different customers. And it was really practical, but at the same time, it was very, very interesting. And to me, it goes back to linking when I was in actually junior high school, when I was in Korea. And when I was young, I was a trained ice skater. I'm from South Korea, so, Gangnam, Psy, Oppa, Gangnam style, So that's wrong presentation about Gangnam, because Gangnam is quite, quiet, and the, kind of, really the local area where, there are schools, and, it's not really Gangnam party area, right? And I was trained ice skater, and, I was, scouted when I was like kindergarten, and my coach became national, Olympic coach, and said, "You're very strong, you're fast, you need to train." And when my parents decided, oh, by the way, coach, we are migrating to Australia, and my coach was, melting down, "Don't go to Australia, go to Canada, because they don't ice skate much, And I said, oh, and that's when my mom actually asked me, "Angela, do you know ice skate professionally in your entire life?" And little Angela pondered through for 5 seconds, and maybe not really, mommy. There's something behind rainbow. I can't remember, but that's what my mom said. She said, "Okay, if you don't want to ice skate, then we migrate to Australia, it's okay." And then, I met amazing mathematics teachers, and I fell in love with, linear equations, algebras, everything led to, one another. And that's how I really loved mathematics, and I was kind of thinking about going into actual profession because I loved it. And then when I met, these amazing mentors from, China and India, I really learned the power of AI. And when I really tasted what it can do to help people, that was the moment that, it became my destiny. And that's how everything's kind of linked. And I worked in banking and, insurance industry as a data scientist. And it still continues.
Thank you. So as we know, AI has a lot of promise. So if you have a crystal ball, and we look forward 5 years from now, which areas of AI you think are thriving, and how will they benefit society? Maybe let's get Thomas to start.
Okay. So I think I would go big. You've seen like a tool, AI for good. So helping us to, let's say, predict weather conditions. We had lots of problems in Australia with fire, with floods. So building those large models, and AI is almost at this, or AI and technologies at this kind of time when we can actually push the limits to the next level. So I think that will be like next 5 years, gonna be fundamental. So again, I strongly encourage you to look at our GTC keynote next week. So register for that conference, and you're gonna see some more, because we're showing some more amazing stuff. Climate change.
Right. Do you want to add, Grace?
Sure. I completely and totally agree. I think in 5 years, the obvious answer is that AI is going to be all over your house, right? Your rice cooker, your dishwasher, your lighting system, your security system. We're going to be taking all of that for granted. And it's just part of your day-to-day life. But what is less obvious is that AI is sort of underpinning science, and it's the force multiplier for science, for drug discovery, for material science, for climate prediction, chemistry, biology, physics. That is going to be a fundamental tool for every aspect of that. And we should really be using AI to impact humanity in a very fundamental way.
Thank you. Angela, what does a crystal ball tell you?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I hope to see more applications of practical, AI, for example, metaverse that Thomas talked about. With Women in AI, we work with very closely with the Finnish government, the Government Innovation Agency, and also Netherlands, Amsterdam, the team who's leading metaverse project. So we create metaverse environment for the indigenous community and also the refugee community, and we run hackathon. And we want to really try to really, share the skill sets and, how to really share the trainings as well. So I'd like to see, really in 5 years, people, can have more easy access to the learning and training, not because you are somewhere and not because you are from privileged background. Doesn't mean that, you have better access to all this, emerging technology. Rather, if there's, really common goal shared and there's opportunity to provide to the people, which background you came from, actually, if you have a mindset, if you have a purpose, you can actually get into it and we can provide support and grow together. That kind of things I'd like to see it.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I want to start by looking back 5 years rather than forward 5 years. And if I just go back to 2017, that was actually the kind of introduction of transformer models from a number of researchers at Google. And thinking back over that last 5 years, it's really amazing how much transformer models have transformed the state of AI today, particularly around things like large foundation models that are sort of underpinning a lot of the kind of language prediction or image classification or generative image technologies. So looking forward in 5 years' time, those foundation models clearly are not going away. They just enable too many interesting applications to be put in place. But I think we're sort of still way behind on the kind of tools and APIs that actually allow them to be adapted and be fit for purpose in many different applications. They can be used in many applications, but most kind of production ML work these days is putting all the guardrails, safety systems, data wrangling, everything else. That's what actually takes most of the time and effort, not actually connecting up to your favorite API and a foundation model. I'm also a believer in Andrew Ng's prediction that most problems over the next decade may actually be these small or low data environments rather than 2 billion images downloaded from somewhere. So incorporating AI into these small low data environments I think is going to be super interesting, and maybe having some toolkits that are akin to the low code, no code offerings that are kind of particularly over the last 5 years have really become highly sort of used by a number of organizations and really kind of democratizing access to coding without having to know how to code in code. Something that Peter Bartlett mentioned earlier I think is another thing that I think is really critical, which is really thinking about how can we drive down both the costs and the carbon associated with AI. The Apple II I mentioned for working with ELIZA had 64 kilobytes of RAM in total. And it's really kind of astonishing that we walk around with mobile phone computers in our pockets with gigabytes of RAM. What are we doing with it all? And it's clear that over the last year, again, with these foundation models, what we're seeing is this relentless driving down of the cost. So if we compare, say, DALL-E 2 to what has happened with Stable Diffusion over just like literally under 12 months, you can see this kind of huge drop in the costs. And again, Peter was talking about that with respect to some of the Google models for large-scale language models. And then just going out on a pure limb for 5 years' time, what's going to be hot. I'm going to be kind of counter the current, just throw lots of data at everything. And I think that these neuro-symbolic reasoning systems sort of reverting back to kind of classical AI, but combined with transformers and transformer architectures, I think that's going to be really interesting. It's a little bit new at the moment. But I just don't think that dumb pattern recognition at massive scale actually feels like a compelling foundation for getting closer to cognition or understanding, even if it's a super useful tool set. Like, it's incredibly useful to have these things, but there's more going on in humans and what they do in connection with each other than just throwing data at it.
Thank you. That's really inspiring directions to look ahead. Now, looking at Australia, we have an amazing ecosystem of researchers, innovators, industry leaders here. So what are some of the wicked hard problems? You alluded to some before, but if you can pick one hard wicked problem that we can all work together as an Australian AI community, what will that be? And what is your call for action? Grace?
Sure. I think a theme for today has been responsible AI. I think in the research community, we're making big strides in our large models, for instance, but we're really not as invested as we could be on the safety of our technology and the trustworthiness and sort of mitigating bias and making sure they're fair. And it's easy to talk about this in a very general sense, right? But really, do we take into account cultural context? And if you look at Australia, Australia is very uniquely positioned in the Asia Pacific. We have a very multicultural population. Can we ensure that we're mitigating bias and we're being fair to all of our users? And this is not just gender bias, it's like all the culture. Can we take into account cultural context, like Southeast Asian context, all the different communities in Southeast Asia? Can all these systems ultimately be useful for all the different populations? And I think Australia is well positioned to be able to work on these problems. Ultimately, we want these to be useful, right? Not just propagating stereotypes, for instance. We want all that technology to be safe and useful for all the different populations, including our Indigenous populations. And understanding how this technology is useful for each and every one of these communities, I think is really important.
Thank you. So responsible AI, so that's really one of the things that our institute is also very much focusing on. Thomas, you want to add to that?
I agree 100% with that. 100%. Like my one thing would be metaverse, Australian metaverse. I don't know, some of you, now I know some of you know that we're like on cutting edge innovations in 3D space, like VRLM, HTML. In the past, we're growing, like the internet. We have metaverse coming. I want to see, us call for action, extreme collaboration, and UNSW AI Institute in the middle of that, of course, right? So how we can enable building, like the AI models that are responsible, but as well representing our reality, right? If you're representing something in simulations, that is absolutely like reflecting what the reality is, and how you can apply it to simulate different scenarios. And I want to see that in Australian context.
Can I ask you something about the metaverse?
Yeah.
So will that actually, improve sustainability, you think? Or because some people think they're trade-offs.
Well, the metaverse and, digital twins of things allows you to do simulations. And simulations will allow us to do a variety of scenarios, what-if scenarios. And if you actually take it very seriously, responsible angle, I think it can help.
Great. Angela, do you want to add?
Well, excuse me. To me, I don't think it's just limited to Australian problem, but globally, I think, it is like a lot of researches and a lot of, development is happening, but it's a bit silent because, corporates and, academics and also the community, the citizens who's using these days all AI product services embedded and, even kids, youth people accessing without knowing what they're consenting for, right? So a lot of, this tech literacy, AI literacy, there is gap in terms of, how, for example, AI Institute can really run a forum like, the one of the great forum I attended at, Harvard University Boston when I attended the Berkeley Klein Center, the workshop was, they run lunchtime lunch and, learn to public. So people living in the corner suburb, grandparents, everyone like, the people come and ask the relevant question. All this content moderation, does it harm for me? How is algorithm created? So making AI and more explainable to the common, the citizens, because they know that what they're actually allowing and consenting, and they really understand what they're actually getting into it, right? So that they can have the right conversation with their children, because the parents are more knowledgeable than children, be well-equipped. And that's linking towards the encouraging more girls into STEM education. It's all kind of interconnected. So not just Australian problem, but there's a bit of, gap. And I think AI Institute, can play amazing, curating and facilitating amazing conversation to really equip everyone to bring, everyone together in the forums like this.
Thank you. And Peter?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on something that Angela said. I guess, humans, or at least speaking for myself, tend to think of software systems kind of like classical Newtonian physics. It's sort of cause and effect. It's very predictable. You know what's going to happen. And it's taken us like 50, 60 years to try and deal with the fact that it's really hard to tell a computer exactly what to do and get it right in the kind of systems that we build. But I think AI systems are much more like quantum physics, where we have many positions being held simultaneously in the model, and it's really down to very subtle differences as to the input, as to what we will actually get as output from those models. And Peter Bartlett again gave that lovely example earlier on, where you can go from a panda to something completely different. And you're like, it's clearly, as a human, still a panda. What on earth went on with that model? I think humans really don't grasp these kind of statistical, probabilistic outputs in ways because we're lazy. We don't think statistically very often. We just want to think as lazily and quickly as we can. And so things that don't behave the same all the time are really hard. And that's exactly the explainability thing that Angela was talking about, where how do we communicate why a system made a particular decision? Why did it not do something different? And I think the work around trying to build our systems in ways that communicate uncertainty, communicate like failure, is incredibly challenging to do well. Again, this is a classic HCI problem, to do this kind of working with complex and unpredictable systems.
Thank you. So my takeaway from that is we as a community, we should work on responsible AI, responsible metaverse, and basically tech inclusion, and basically tech and AI literacy, and also explainable AI. So those are the four big homeworks for all of us. Now, I'd like to take questions from the floor. If there are roving mics, so any question? Aaron, to kick it off.
Thank you very much. So we've heard a lot about explainability in AI, and I was wondering if you could give us a good example for many of the students here in the room as to what you see as one of the best examples of a system that actually can explain itself. I've seen lots of researchers do it, and other researchers can kind of understand it, but something that my husband or my mother-in-law could understand, at that level, what's the best example you think you can point to right now?
It's a really hard question. I'll take a stab at it. So the one that I always use personally when talking about this with colleagues and stuff is simply going to Netflix, and the set of recommendations that you're seeing are often associated with very simple recommendations that explain why they are showing you, or in a way that you can understand because you watch this movie, British historical romance movies from the 18th century, or these kind of quite niche categories that me or my wife or my son have chosen to follow in Netflix somehow. And I think that kind of thing where you found a way to describe something in the same language that the actual product or the experience is being articulated in language that is simple and easy to understand. And this is hard work. Like, there's some really great work out of Netflix on their research exactly on how they went about thinking about recommending that. So it's a really simple example. I think there's many others, but the answer is definitely not, here's the 50 features that went into this model and this one was slightly larger than all the others. That isn't an explanation that works.
Thank you.
Very exciting panel. I just have a question in terms of looking into the future. AI as it stands right now really depend on data, really depend on finding those relationships. But in the last, I'd say, I don't know, decade or so, we've had unprecedented events. Trump getting elected, nobody predicted that. COVID-19, nobody predicted that. So how does AI would be robust enough to handle these unprecedented, unpredictable events in the future?
Do you want to respond?
or Grace?
You want to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful question. and I think there are lots of things that AI is built on like training data, right? And we're just starting to get a sense of how to make predictions with very little data. And it's based on sort of a big foundation of probabilities. It's going to be hard. I think I'm past one of your questions is can we predict the unpredictable? That's going to be very difficult to answer. However, I completely agree that there is an increasing amount of complexity in the world, and that is an opportunity for AI to solve these problems with a lot of different, like disparate inputs as data, right? Like how, for instance, how would you have predicted that Trump won the election? Where no one predicted it, but that is a sort of a prediction problem that would take in a lot of different inputs. And could an AI system predicted that? I don't know. But it actually presents lots of interesting problems for our AI researchers. And as our AI advances, you're likely to see that AI is going to get better at predicting things like this.
Yeah, I can add maybe like few thoughts to that. Did you hear about something called physics ML? So physics ML is basically like this little thing that you set up, symbolic language, let's say in Python, when you describe your equations, PDEs, ODEs, and then you don't need to have data to train your models. And you can actually have some data and gaps in the data, so the models are fitting in the remaining data sets to train the model, or you can basically build model in traditional when you have like lots of data and you don't have physics, right? So either physics-based, no physics-based, and somewhere in the middle. So strongly encourage you to look into that because those methods are very heavily used in climate change now, and we're getting closer and closer to predicting more and more time span as well. So it's absolutely fascinating. The framework we have, it's called NVIDIA Modulus. It's open source. Strongly encourage you to look on the website and tell me what you think.
And also, I'd like to add on Grace's point. We couldn't predict, what COVID is going to bring and when it was going to happen, right? But what we could do was actually, after COVID happened, the Winning AI APEC team, the Malaysia and Singapore and Australia, we got together and then we worked to try to create this, the visual analytics tool using Tableau to really, see where the cluster is moving and try to really help each other and share the data to different, communities and people so that people can be equipped with a better information. So I really strongly agree with Grace's point about, maybe we can't prevent everything, but with AI, we can actually minimize the risk. And given the situation, like we can really leverage what it can do to help the people and also, really remove some risky situation.
That's a really great, final comment actually on closing this discussion. AI for good, not for harm, to minimize the risk. So thank you so much. Let's again thank you all.
What a fabulous discussion and a great interaction there from everyone. Thanks very much. Well, that was quite a tour de force. Not bad for half a day. It feels like a whole day. Many thanks to our panelists and to the chair. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is only a taste of what UNSW AI can deliver. Coming in October will be workshops on AI law, regulation and policy in Australia and beyond. Then, AI for cities, mobility, transport, healthy and equitable cities, and AI and cybersecurity in social media. And that's just in October. You've got November with workshops on AI and 6G communications. Then AI for renewable energy technologies. And already planned for early next year, we've got some big speakers coming for machine learning advances in cardiovascular health. All involve eminent researchers bringing you insights on the global thinking around AI. Don't miss them. Be sure to register for these and others by checking out the website, which is really easy to remember. It's unsw.ai. How easy is that? A big thank you, first and foremost, to the School of Computer Science and Engineering, who has put up the commitment to make this Institute a reality, and also to the Faculty of Engineering. Without them, none of this would have happened. We also, I think we should thank all of the people who have made today possible. Our speakers, of course, we've all heard from them, who shared their insights, the crack team of researchers who came together to make UNSW AI a reality. And look, a big call out to the people behind the scenes who made today possible. Kate Carruthers, Melody Coronel, Charlie Jean, and Emma Rule. And of course to you for coming and asking your questions. My name is Wilson Da Silva. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thank you.